Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the SOMM TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise. We have a special bonus, I don't know, kind of, for me, very sad, but wonderful episode today. Our podcast producer, who has produced all but maybe a couple episodes of the SOMM TV podcast, Nadine Nettmann, is moving on. She's still alive. She's going to be fine. She's on this podcast. She's moving on to another job, and she is by far one of my favorite humans. I'm going to miss you so much, Nadine. After years at SOMM TV, she is going on, and we're very, very excited to follow all of the amazing things you're going to do in the wine business. But in order to send you off, we wanted to have you on the pod, which you've only done a few times. You've been on a couple times. We want to have you on to talk your favorite 3 wines that you have had filming during SOMM TV. And as a bonus treat, and I really mean a bonus, we have our audio engineer, John Adams, on, who has been on site for all of these as a sound man. And he runs our audio department. We have 2 people who are the backbone of SOMM TV on here. How are you 2?
Wonderful.
Doing good. I'm excited to be on the pod for this chance. I think I've done like maybe 3 other ones. And
long-time listener, first-time caller?
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Good. Well, you're caller number 6 for those Janet Jackson tickets. I'm looking forward to talking. John has been on the pod one time previous.
Also a veteran.
He has mixed almost every episode of the podcast. And John has his own vineyard. You may remember him from the Wild Sound Wine podcast, where him and his wife, Megan, basically talked about how it'd be better to travel through Dante's Inferno than start a vineyard.
That also might be my favorite graphic we've had on the podcast, because they were both covered in mud and sitting like on the ground. Covered in mud was the graphic, because winemaking is easy.
Winemaking is easy. Before we get started, I just want to say again to you, Nadine, we are going to miss you so much at SOMM TV. You are so important, and especially to the podcast. This has been sort of our baby, and I am going to miss you. It's going to be really hard, and I'm going to try not to cry.
I know. I'm going to miss you guys so much, too. The podcast has been so much fun. All of it's been so much fun, and just such like a light in my life for the last 4 years. I started helping you guys out in August of 2018, and here we are. So 4 years, and no, I'm definitely going to miss you guys, and you've been just wonderful, and I'm either going to try and make you cry for sad or cry with laughter on this pod, so I've kind of on to set with a bar.
This is great. Well, this is like listening to three longtime friends talk about wines that we'll never get to try again, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably, because they're all absurd. All right. So here's the rules. Obviously, this has to have aired on SOMM TV. The bottles we're going to call have to have aired, and at least 2 of us have to have been on site for the drinking of said bottle. If anybody has an overlap, then we will talk about that wine at that time. All right? So, sounds confusing. Shouldn't be. We're all too sober for this. Okay? All right.
We can change that.
We could. We could do shots of name it. All right, Nadine, why don't you do the honors with your number 3 favorite wine that you have drank while filming at SOMM TV?
Okay. And I will say, this was not easy to narrow down, because we've had some amazing, amazing wines, and all the times we've been on set and introduced to things. My number 3, I chose the 1968 Late Harvest Zinfandel. That was opened from my commas. That was opened with Jean Arnold Sessions and Bernard Portet. One, it was amazing. It held up well, through all the years, but also just the memory of it, because Jean Arnold Sessions came to set with it. She was so excited to show it to us. And then she said, I want to open it. I've been saving this and waiting to open this on a special moment. And today is a special moment. And Jean is just the most lovely, lovely human. And just to be able to sip that wine with her and Bernard Portet and be on set for that, I thought that has to make one of my top 3. So that's my number 3.
Why don't you say who these people are and where you can watch that episode?
So Bernard Portet was the winemaker for Clos de Vol, helped found it back in the day. And Jean Arnold Sessions is one of basically a Napa star. She ran Hansel for a long time. She's just throughout the valley, you just mentioned her name and everybody knows her. She's just lovely. She's a Napa icon. So we have these 2 icons, Bernard Portet and Jean Arnold Sessions, and they sat down to drink this bottle in a Drink a Bottle episode called the 1968 Late Harvest Zinfandel. And it's just phenomenal hearing them talk about the history of Napa, hear them talk about their wine journeys.
Yeah, these 2, her husband, we should say, made that wine, and it was a pretty emotional situation because he has passed since. But Bob Sessions is equal to her, a legend in the Valley. And that wine was the wine that inspired the Judgment of Paris. Obviously, we have a film coming about this, and that's going to be a big part of it. But this wine was the wine that the people who organized, Patricia Gallagher, who organized the Judgment of Paris, tasted and went, well, frankly, I mean, she wouldn't say it this way, but she went, holy shit, California wine is in a place that can rival things. And it was this wine. It was this 68 late harvest. And do you remember when we opened it, we all looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, this wine is outrageous. This wine was really good.
That wine was crazy.
That wine was good.
It really was.
Yeah. What was your impression of what we would normally, if you saw a late harvest Zin and you're like, I mean, what would your impression be if you're at a restaurant and somebody's like, would you like to try our late harvest Zin? What would you say, John?
Also, I mean, late harvest Zin is not really on your radar typically for a wine, especially from Napa Valley at this point in time, right? So like to be able to taste a late harvest Zin that was that old, that was stored perfectly for that many years was pretty magical. I remember it just being kind of like, it's one of those wines you don't even have to taste it. You just put it up to your nose and it's like, holy shit, this is going to be a really great wine. This is special. And it was, obviously it's late harvest, so it's got some residual sugar, but the acid was still so perfectly balanced. And it was just it was a great experience. Plus with all the people that were there that day, with Gene Arnold Sessions there and just the emotions. And it was a pretty special wine for sure.
I think it had been in her cellar, like since it was pretty much made, since her husband made it. Like, I think it was one that she had just been saving and basically went from the winery to her house and then to our set.
Crazy. Honestly, this is the thing about SOMM TV, like that gets pulled off, is that there's no situation that happens where that kind of wine, that there's maybe 2 bottles left in the world, a few bottles, who knows? I mean, but perfectly stored. I remember the acid. That was the thing that blew me away. And with quote unquote dessert wines, so necessary to have a wine that has that structure, can balance. And there's no wonder that Patricia tasted this wine and went, had her aha moment for the Judgment of Paris. I mean, this wine was outrageous. Plus, Mayacamas is just awesome. The stories, the location, the perseverance with everything they've dealt with.
It was a half bottle too, right?
It was a half bottle. Well, that was the crazy thing.
More amazing, yeah.
Yeah, that was the crazy thing. I'm going to say this. There's some people listening who are like, this is going to be for the ultra geeks out there. Half of you are like, half bottles can't age, and the other half are like, I know a secret. I've had some of my best wines ever out of a half bottle. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm in the camp of like, holy shit, some half bottles can be wild. And I don't know why. I don't understand it. More oxygen ratio and all of this, but for some reason, half bottles can bring the noise. So
maybe they're just kept cozy because they're small, so they get
they have
protected
Napoleon
by
complex.
The other bottles.
They have like a Napoleon complex. They're trying to overshoot their value.
Overcompensate. Yeah.
They're overcompensating.
Well, in this case, it worked.
Yeah, totally.
They're like some middle-aged guy who drives like a red Ferrari. They're just trying to overcompensate for something. It's good. I like that about half bottles. All right, John, what do you have for your number 2 or your number 3? I apologize.
Number three, yes.
Wine.
So this is a bit of a deep cut. This is from season 1, Verticals, episode 1, Steve and Carol Legere Meredith. This was a 1981 Chateau Nonchalant Oakville Cabernet made by Steve.
This is such a good call.
This wine was unreal. It was the brief story behind this wine. So this was Oakville Cabernet that he got for free. Okay, he was working at.
They just give that shit away. They just give that shit away. I mean,
he was working
Oakville
at UC
fruit.
Davis at the time, I think, and they have the Oakville Research Station for UC Davis where they grow this Cabernet, and I think this stuff goes for like 10 G's a ton now, or more.
Didn't he steal it? Wasn't that part of the story?
Know.
He took it.
Who knows?
So it's not quite. It's for free.
But yeah. But this wine was it was unbelievable. It was like classic, just that killer old Napa Cabernet vibe. It was like, it wasn't too ripe. It was perfectly. It's also a birth year wine for me, right? So I was born in 81. Mm-hmm. This wine was in 81, but it had that like that minty kind of eucalyptus vibe that old Napa sometimes gets, and it was just a wine that it was kind of important for me too, because on this particular trip when we were filming, this was the actual trip where my wife and I were driving from LA to the Willamette Valley where we were moving. We were leaving LA and we stopped to film for a week in Napa. And
with the cars full of shit. I remember you guys looked like the Beverly Hillbillies with stuff just like packed at the top of the brim. It was great.
We were literally leaving LA, like not coming back with everything in our lives in this Jeep. So it was kind of a formative time for me. And this wine was pretty special. It's a great wine. Thanks, Steve.
I'm disappointed you haven't mentioned those Oakville tannins yet. One of my favorite things with...
Damn it, the bench tannins.
It's from those alluvial fans, John. The alluvial fan there is really important.
Yep.
Oh, some inside jokes there. That wine was perfect. That wine was velvety and wonderful and tasted expensive as hell. It really did. It had that I think it's sad to say, but when you taste wine like that now in Napa, you go, oh, this tastes expensive. I don't even describe you're talking eucalyptus and mint. I'm like, this is kind of like rolled up hundreds over 20s. It's kind of how this tastes.
Totally.
So that's a good call. Vertical season 1, very first episode, which is one of the funniest. The two of them up on Mount Veeder making wine.
Great episode for sure.
My mom still refers to it as that episode where the couple dances.
Yeah, that's right. They sort of do that, their silly walk or whatever and film birds and find a gun. It's a very weird episode. I love it so much.
Jason Wise, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is going to be a real weird one. You talk about a deep cut. It's a deep cut in 5 ways. I'm picking a white Zinfandel as my number 3 best wine. Yeah, bring it. I've talked about this wine before, but never on its own volition. I just did a podcast with Steve Mathiasen about the history of white Zinfandel, and maybe that's playing into my pick here, but I don't think so. I think when you taste wine, some of them they fire up the neurons in your brain in a way where you sort of see color and you see story. And for me, I've always thought white Zinfandel was this thing that you meet SOMMs and they write it off. I'm talking to all you SOMMs right now. You write this wine off completely, or you say it's like this piece in time or a place in time and this kitschy kind of thing. And it is all of those. But white Zin's also uniquely American. White Zin is like the food in New Orleans. It is everything coming together from every culture, creating something that Americans only could have created. And here's the interesting thing.
It's like the jazz of wine.
It's the jazz of wine. If jazz was played by an electronic YouTuber trying to do Kenny G. You know what I mean? It's it's like the TikTok version of Christopher Nolan,
I wanted to drink it up until that point. Now I'm unsure.
It's really selling.
Okay, but here's the thing. This wine is the 86 White Zin from Ridge Vineyards on I believe this is episode 2 of our part 2 of our Verticals on Ridge. So this would be the season finale of season 1. And this wine, an 86 White Zin made by, look, humbly, this is not sponsored, one of my favorite wineries in all of California, let alone the United States. I mean, their Montebello is probably known as, if you're going to pick a Grand Cru in the United States and start that nonsense, I would probably start with Montebello. So this was made off of fruit that came out of, at the bottom of the bins. So from the weight of the grapes pushing down, the fruit expels some juice, and they started doing that. And, Paul Draper, who made a wine in the Judgment of Paris, he would be on the short list of the most important winemakers for a number of reasons in United States history, let alone California. He was like, let's make a white Zin. And they tried, but what they did was not your traditional white Zin. It had acid. It was much more of a Bandol type rosé type of a thing, I would call it, but an ageable one. They opened this wine kind of as a novelty from their museum library. So this is not like, oh, I got a bottle laying around. This is like a true unicorn. And they pulled it out because it was like a decoration. It's like, look what we tried one time. And they opened it up. And thank God I was wearing my astronaut diaper. If I hadn't been, this would have been a very, very messy situation.
Don't you always wear the astronaut diaper?
I mean, I'm wearing it now. Sadly, it's always the same one, so it's really uncomfortable. But I would say this wine knocked my socks off. I mean, it actually, you kind of talk about neurons firing. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I went in to Ridge thinking you'd have to drag me across concrete at 40 miles an hour to make a documentary on white Zinfandel. And then I had this wine. I was like, when do we make a documentary about white Zinfandel? Because this wine was so interesting and so delicious and aged so well. And for you 6 diehards and my mom who listens to every episode, I love aged rosé. I do. I love it. I think it's one of wine's great pleasures, and I just adore it. And I think it's really, really one of the hardest wines to make. This 86 White Zin from Ridge was stupendous, beautiful. It had acid, the fruit was there in a non-abrasive way. The acid was there in a non-abrasive way. It was very smooth. It had this deliciously kind of starting to have a caramel kind of oxidized quality to it, which gave it this kind of balance with the fruit and acid that you could only get in aged rosé. It was delicious. It was amazing. All right, I will go off my
that was a great
my
one.
box with that, but
yeah, people recently talk about aged rosé, but no one ever talks about aged white Zinfandel. So that's kind of fun. Like knowing
that's my next pulpit. I'm gonna,
Maybe it's the new thing.
Yeah.
Aged white Zin.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, like 1986, like most people would probably just write that off and not even, whoever has a 1986 white Zin.
This guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, also John, you had it. So.
Yeah, no, it was pretty great.
Yeah.
No, it was awesome. It had structure still, but it was just an anomaly of deliciousness, I think.
Yeah.
I wasn't there that day, but did it fade off pretty quick? Like, did you open it? Did it show and then decline, or did it keep pretty steady?
I don't know. We sort of chugged it.
That's awesome.
It went down real fast, and I wanted the bottle so bad. I was like, I really want this bottle on my shelf, and they were like, sorry, it's got to go back in our museum because that's the last bottle we have. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? So that was my number 3.
Solid pick.
Nadine, what do you have for your number 2 wine on SOMM TV?
So my number 2 wine is the 1979 Spring Mountain Cabernet. And not only was this wine phenomenal and aged well and not a birth year, I was conceived in 79, so we'll go with that.
Yep,
so I was born in 80. But we drank it at dusk in Chateau Chevalier. And so there's bats flying around.
So this is our ghost winery. We have a whole movie coming about this, but we did a podcast. Just want to put some context.
Yeah.
A podcast coming up about ghost. The podcast already aired. So that was
a
year and a half ago.
About a year and a half ago. And so we're recording this podcast. There's 3 of us in there. There's no electricity in this building. The sunlight is going away. There's bats flying around, and we're sitting there drinking this 1979 Spring Mountain Cabernet. So to me, not only was the wine phenomenal, held up beautifully. Like I think Spring Mountain has the best library wines I've had, but just that moment of being in kind of a relatively creepy place, drinking wine with good friends while talking about ghost wineries, to me was like ranked really high up there. So that's why I went with that one.
You can also see this bottle on the Behind the Glass Spring Mountain episode. So if you watch that show, it was, I believe, the first episode we aired, and they do open that bottle. Nadine, this is a solid pick.
Yeah, great pick.
I'm so afraid of talking more about Spring Mountain's library wines and Spring Mountain as a whole, because as much as I want everyone to know about them, I kind of don't, because they're so good. And they're just, SOMMs and winemakers all know. It's not like this is a secret, but.
I know. I actually have the bottle here. The 1979 Spring Mountain that we drank that night is literally on the shelf right in front of me, because every time I look at it, I feel like inspired and then also get inspired by creepy things. So although we drank it in the Behind the Glass, there weren't as many ghosts. I'm not saying there weren't ghosts. There just weren't as many.
That was a great wine. That was, again, very old style Napa wine, where it's very low alcohol and not kind of this modern era's version of what you expect from Cab.
I love history, and I love that the label is different from how it is now. And you've got the green top to it, which they don't do that green top anymore. And so I don't know, I'm big on old wines because you feel like you're opening a time capsule. And so that was just cool to see how it was before. It's like a treat. You get to experience the history through the wine.
This is weird. We have 3 California wines so far. Someone's listening in the UK or in France, and they're like, come on, you guys got to have something else, right? We'll see. John, what do you have for your number 2? Can't be a California wine, right?
You know what? It is a California wine. I'm sorry. We're going to stay. Well, people need to understand, we filmed a lot in the Bay Area.
Especially during COVID.
So we've had a lot of time to explore it. Vertical Season 2, this was the Mayacamas episode, and this bottle was incredible. This is a 1970 Mayacamas Cabernet, and when we were filming the Mayacamas episode, we had an amazing time. We explored this Gold Rush era mine that day. Our entire crew got terrible poison oak. It was unbelievable.
Hold on. Yeah, you guys didn't. Me and Jackson both had it for like months, but you both seemed
Jason
to
and I
escape
escaped
through.
the Poison Oak disaster.
That's right.
But we interviewed Phil Katuri, who's an amazing vineyard manager and like a hell of a character in himself.
He told us a story about tripping on acid in a
But we
wine
didn't know
cellar.
he was tripping on acid. We thought he was actually sitting in a cave fighting off with swords. And he's like, well, this was all in my mind.
Because I was tripping on acid. That was just the way every story should end. Keep going, John. Sorry.
So we were filming with Gina Arnold Sessions, and she opened this 1970 My Comas cab, and it was such an emotional tasting because this is her, she's talking about a wine that her late husband made in 1970, and this was one of Bob Sessions, the winemaker, one of his all-time favorite vintages that, I don't know, had she had that vintage in recent memory?
Not recently. John, I got to just say, this is one of the best wines I've ever had in my life. I mean,
I have to third that as well. The wine was absolutely phenomenal. Thank goodness for the astronaut diaper you lent me, Jason, because that was just amazing.
Yeah, it's true. I lent you the same one I always wear, but hopefully.
Yeah. It was just classic old school. I love the Maya Kamas wines. They're incredible. But from a stylistic standpoint, this is just like classic old school Napa cab. They fermented it in concrete vats. I think on the label, the alcohol was like 12.5, and 50 years later, who knows? It's probably like 11.7 now. It
was like a Miller Lite.
Yeah, it's just one of those wines that is so, you're not gonna be able to drink that wine again, probably. It's a great experience.
I remember all three of us looking at each other and going, "We're never gonna have this again. This is it. It's over."
I do remember about that 1970. Braden drove it down from Maya Kamas that morning to where we were filming. So it had never left Maya Kamas up until right before we opened it on set. So it was just, label was pristine, everything was pristine, and the wine itself was just...
Yeah, you're not going to have that wine again.
I think I have that bottle. I took that bottle. I'm like, it's weird. You ever see like, this is a weird reference, but like Saving Private Ryan, where Tom Sizemore's character has like the little containers of dirt, and it says like Africa, France, Italy, all the places he's fought, and he holds them. He's like, I can remember what it's like to be there. Yeah. But for me, I touch these bottles. I kind of, I got them behind me here, and like I can just sort of like remember what it was like to do this. It's for me, it's emotional. I know the people who are into wine, it is too. It's pretty fun.
And we're so lucky to be able to do this. We really are. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, we are very lucky. All
right, Jason Wise, number 2.
Oh, it's my turn for number 2? Yeah, my number 2 is going to break the California spell here.
This is good. We need this.
Yeah, I'm going to break the California spell with a wine. Wait, there's a chance this is your number 1, Nadine.
I have a feeling it is because you haven't mentioned this wine yet, and this is a wine that kind of changed so much for me. So I'm curious if it's the same one.
Should I wait to do this? Should we hold off till Nadine's 1?
Let me ask a hint. Is it a very old bottle?
It's a very old bottle.
Let's do it.
All right. My number 1, and we'll see if it's the same.
I have it in my hand. I think it's exactly what I'm thinking.
Is the 1824 Madeira? Yes, that's it.
Boom. Well, it is for all intents and purposes. It does say bottle. It says imported in 1824. So
it might even be.
This is probably 1700s.
So that wine to me was so much. I remember people always say, "What's the oldest bottle you've ever tasted?" And I always be like, "Oh, in 1970s." And then it was like, "Oh, I got to taste like a 1930s." And then came along this 1824 was one, just a historical piece like that has survived.
It's 2022 as we record, right?
Yeah.
This says 1824. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but again, this was bottles. This is over 200 years old.
Over 200 years.
We are talking, this wine could be and probably is somewhere north of 225 because of the way Madeira was often done, oxidized, whatever else, especially at this time, especially considering getting across the sea at this time was a long time. It was a pain in the ass. People died along the way.
You could die.
Oh, well, that's part of the deal. But
scurvy.
Scurvy. Rickets, things that we miss these days. So it was, I want to say this is probably 200 and some years old, 200 and some change.
Amazing. And the thing is like, I don't think I'll ever get to chase anything older, and nor do I need to, because this wine was just beautiful. Just this lovely caramel flavor that I can even still just like go back to in my mind right now as I sat there and just poured this with you. And it was just such an incredible moment that we were so fortunate to have it. It came through a family for this Clos de Vol piece, and was just to find. Sometimes when you have older wines, you kind of wonder, like, oh, is everyone who made this along the journey, are they dead? Well, this one, you for sure know they've all passed. Their generations have gone on. Are their families still making wine? Who picked the grapes? Where were they grown? I mean, the whole time capsule in that bottle blew my mind. Like, that will, I think, forever be my top wine.
It still smells like it. And here's the interesting thing. Like, this is from the Gillette family, and a member of the family drank it on a Drink a Bottle episode you can watch right now. And I think it's listed as the 1824 Madeira. Again, probably older. So a member of that family drank it with Ted Henry, who was at the time the winemaker at Clos de Vol, which is owned by the Gillette family still. So the history with this bottle is bonkers. But holding it in my hand, if you've ever seen like Pirates of the Caribbean and Johnny Depp like finds a treasure chest of old shitty wine buried and he drinks it, that looks like this bottle.
He talks about the rum that was then gone.
This looks like a rum bottle from like Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, this is like, it's like this fused hand blown like greenish blue. It's insane. I mean, the bottle itself is just an incredible thing, let alone what was in it.
It seems like one of those you would put a boat inside.
Yeah, it's definitely like old school blown glass.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, it looks like a prop. It's incredible. Yeah. And that was my number 2, your number 1. So then I guess, I mean, that bottle spiritually, every wine person who's listening to this going, well, I'll never get to have an old bottle of wine. And oh my God, they're talking about stuff on it. I will say you can get crazy old Madeiras. And if not that, crazy old Riva salts. And if not that, crazy old ports. And I'm going to tell you, one of you or all of you have a birthday coming up that's special. Get one of these bottles, splurge, seek it out, do it 2 years before your birthday or a year. You can find these bottles. You can drink something from the Civil War. You really actually can. Shop around, do it. It is so worth it. And it will change. Get your best friends and get the most important people around, and you will never, ever forget it. And that's what this is for Nadine and I. It's an incredible, bonkers story. I mean, it was really, really special.
I love that you kept the bottle too. That's so fun to have that as kind of like a memento.
Yeah, I love it. It's like I can hold it and still kind of, it's only a Drink a Bottle episode, which doesn't mean to say that that's not special, but like this could have been an entire film. This could have been a film about American history. This could have been a film about all of the tough and amazing stuff this country has done. And, but it wasn't. It was a Drink a Bottle. And it's a lesson that the stories with wine out there are pretty deep. And, anyways, yeah, that was my number 2, your number 1. What do we have for your number 1, John?
Moving on to number 1, I have also left the United States, and we're going to Italy. And this was a Drink a Bottle episode on Mount Vesuvius with Lindsay and Alessandro that we filmed. Was that earlier this year? Yeah, that was March of 2022.
Oh, yeah. That was this year. Oh, yeah, that was very recently.
So this wine, this is a 2020, it's called Insumma, and it is a variety, it's a white Italian variety called Catalanesca, and it's a pretty obscure variety. I think like only 6 producers in the world grow this particular grape. But the circumstances that we consumed this wine were extraordinary, and that's sort of the real story here.
Insane.
And Jason can help me with this story, but we flew to Rome from Los Angeles. We arrive, check into our place. We have maybe an hour or 2 to gather ourselves. Then we get on a train down to Naples, have a bender of an evening in Naples with Lindsay and Alessandro and the whole Roscioli crew.
So like eight courses of pasta and seafood and 47 bottles of wine. That's what you mean after flying from Los Angeles to Rome and taking a train to Naples? Okay.
On zero sleep.
Just fact checking you. Okay.
Yeah. So then we go to sleep for like 4 hours.
Which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah. And then we get up the next morning at the crack of dawn, first light, and we hike to the top of none other than Mount Vesuvius. And I think all of us nearly threw up on the way up the side of this mountain. It's cold. There's snow.
It was freezing effing cold.
It's a national park, and we had to get special permission to go up there. But we literally filmed this Drink a Bottle on the edge of the caldera on Mount Vesuvius, which is something that I don't know that has anybody ever filmed something on the edge of that caldera. Never.
It was the first time that they've ever allowed anything like that. The National Park System was with us. They let us film aerial photography. This was there were a lot of firsts on that Italy trip. I mean, we obviously filmed in the Vatican for an upcoming film, and I had to throw away my astronaut diaper because it broke. It just couldn't handle the weight.
It couldn't. I was going to say, couldn't handle the elevation.
It was a very sad moment. I had that thing for 9 years. So,
but everybody should watch that episode of Drink a Bottle on Mount Vesuvius. It's pretty incredible footage.
I feel like we put that out and people were just like, oh, here's some content. And they watched it. They're like, oh, cool. I don't think people understand what the F we did to do that. I mean, we were literally, it's like we went up to space and, filmed in space. It was insane what we pulled off on that thing.
And I love that you guys drank this wine, which is rare, on the caldera of a volcano that changed so much history.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Vesuvius was one that, covered Pompeii. And there you are. You guys are drinking this rare wine on the slopes. Like, that is just such a cool experience.
And you're thinking about that the whole time you're up there. That does not leave your mind.
It was smoking, remember?
There's smoke.
Volcano is steaming and smoking. And, there's Italians, like, just eating cigarettes. And we're like, how did you do this? We puked trying to get up here. And then, like, it was intense, but it was also... God damn it, John, what a great call. And like just a brief history on this grape, Catalanesca, which I talked on a previous podcast a little bit with Lindsay, who did that trip with us and was in the episode. It's from Catalan. So originally, genetically, it's from southern Spain. Well, the people from Barcelona and that area would not say it's Spain, but it's from southern Spain area, where Barcelona is, or southernish Spain. But it was brought by people probably around, post-Roman times, from Spain, and then planted all over Europe, but everybody ripped it out. So the only place it exists is on Vesuvius now, even though it's originally genetically from that area. So that's why it's Catalanesca. It's Catalan. And it's an incredible story of this really wild story of kind of the way Europe was conquered, settled, migrated, all of this. And so that was the idea of this Drink a Bottle. I hope people watched it, really, because it was it's
a great episode. And also, remember the vineyard, that wine is produced on the north side of Mount Vesuvius. And after we filmed that episode, we went to visit the vineyard. And remember, they had that incredible fresh mozzarella for us and the tomatoes.
Was it the best fresh mozzarella you've ever had in your life?
Yes, hands down.
Hands
Zero
down.
question.
Hands down.
Yes.
Hands down. And they also had like a bunch of meats. Italy does this really well. It's like, for them, it was like, hey, let's put out some stuff the way you and I'd put out like Lay's potato chips. And they're like, hey, let's just put out some food. And it's like, my
it's
neighbors.
the most incredible thing you've ever had when they put it out.
I know.
And it's effortless.
I know.
It's like we didn't even try. It just happened.
Yeah. It's kind of
magical.
Kind of ridiculous. That was an amazing month over the course of 3 days in Italy. I really had a good time during that. All right, are we at my number one? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. We're going back to California. I have no mistakes. Make no mistake. I have a reverence for California, and I have a reverence for it because America seems to have no history. A lot of people don't know who their great grandparents were. They can't name who their great great grandparents were. Names change very fast here. Our history is very short. So when I have an opportunity to kind of be a part of the history that is, in my opinion, building, and we're 500 years away and hopefully still have a country at that point from having any real history, I jump on it. This bottle is not just one of the best Pinot Noirs I've ever had, hands down, but it's one of the best wines I've ever had. And it was the 1962 Charles Krug Pinot Noir. And if you look, there's still some floating in there. What do you think, John? Is that going to be okay?
Do it.
Probably not.
Probably not.
This can be
do it
found,
and then report back to us how you feel.
I mean, I'm tempted to try right now, but
Did you guess that?
I don't know. All right. So the interesting thing with this wine is it was made by two brothers. And if you've ever heard of the name Mondavi, this was made by Peter and Robert Mondavi. So these two guys were, the guys, and they had a very famous breakup right around here. And Robert started his own winery, and they had, let's just say it's a very famous breakup of brothers. And again, something we also have coming to SOMM TV, a whole podcast series about that story, and also a series. So you're going to get that. But this can be found in the Rain Drink a Bottle, where the relative, Mondavi, our good friend on the Rain episode, opens this and talks about his family. And it's pretty... Carlo Mondavi gets pretty emotional drinking this. And we were all pretty surprised by how good it was. I really do express a tiny bit of questioning. whether or not it's pure Pinot Noir in here, because during this time they could have field blended a lot and could have had other stuff, but it tasted like Pinot. It felt like Pinot, had acid. The fruit was incredible. This wine washed across my mouth in a way that I just haven't had a wine, California wine from the 60s. So I put this as my number one wine filming with SOMM TV because, and Charles Krug's still there. You can go there right now. You can have their wines. They're fantastic. But it is just, for this to be part of the history and for the Mondavi name to still mean what it means in the Valley, it's an incredible, incredible experience, and really one that sort of changed me from the way I thought modern and past histories intertwine. So it was really formidable for me. That's my number one.
This was a difficult task to come up with these wines.
It was.
We have a real embarrassment of riches of things to choose from.
And it's so funny because a lot of mine also tend to be situational. And Jason, at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned the Judgment of Paris. And it made me think of the time that you and I were on Zoom at 1:30 in the morning till 7 a.m. producing a segment that's going to be in the film. But we weren't drinking wine. I think we were both eating cup of noodles.
Yeah, we were eating ramen. We were eating like microwave ramen. And it was, we weren't, I don't think we were drinking at all. I think it was just basically like trying to hold on to our sanity with a thread.
You were just fueled by ramen.
We were fueled by salty water and noodles. It was great. But yeah, it really is, just my kind of final thoughts on this is it's really hard to pick these, and it's hard not to keep saying the same ones, because even though we have hundreds of wines that are so special, those experiences are what really mess with your brain. They're the things that mess with wine. And I think that's really important with wine, is that the situation you have it in is it half the battle? I mean,
I would say so.
Is it like a G.I. Joe situation? Yeah, it's like
changes everything.
Changes everything. And I will also say, Nadine, to that effect, the situation of you leaving is going to change this pod. Sad.
No, I will still
Nadine,
be
we're so sad.
I will still be a longtime listener.
Longtime listener. Well, we're giving away lots of Janet Jackson tickets, so caller number 6 if you want to try to get in there.
No, it's been so much fun working with you guys. It's a pleasure to be part of this company and watch it grow and do the podcasts and do the producing. And I'm so excited to watch from not afar, but just a sidestep to the right now and just watch you guys. I have a very strong feeling
you'll be back on the podcast as soon as we do this whole thing on best astronaut diapers to buy. You're the top candidate. So we'll have you on that immediately.
I'll keep this microphone then.
That's a good call. Yeah, keep the microphone just in case.
Nadine, we'll miss you. We love you.
We love you.
I love you guys too. And my favorite moments have been with you guys the last couple of years. And I think my, just real quick, one of my favorite moments was we had our very first dinner during COVID all together when we did a bubble to film. We had some amazing lamb from Kim Alter, and our chef, quote unquote, a member of our group, put it through what he thought was a meat grinder, and it turned out to be a juicer, and made some lamb patties. So that was kind of one of my favorite moments.
It was the quote of the day. I don't know if this is a meat grinder. Like, oh my God, you just put a bunch of meat through a juicer. I can't. I can't believe that's a great memory. Oh my Lord.
It's good.
That's really yeah, we're really pros in the kitchen here at SOMM TV. It's good. Well, Nadine, we wish you the best of luck, and we wish you that you find better wine than SOMM TV, but that is fucking impossible. So
well, I look forward to grabbing glasses with you guys here, Ned.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, Nadine, for producing the last 130 so odd episodes of SOMM TV podcast. We will miss you. And on to the next 130. Everybody, if you do not have SOMM TV, it's $49.99 for an entire year. I recommend that just stop your car right now, mid-intersection, go to sommtv.com and sign up. Please, if you love the podcast, it really means so much to us. Give us a review. Go to Spotify, go to iTunes, go wherever, and give us a good review. Leave us a review. And for the last time, this episode is produced by Nadine Nettmann and mixed by John Adams. Signing off, Nadine. We will see you next week with a brand new episode. We miss you.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody be safe and drink something great. Bye-bye.